You're listening to Feel Good Astrology with Louisa Tanner Munson. To request a personal reading with Louisa, go to www.feelgoodastrology.com.
Hi, it's Louisa Tanner Munson from Feel Good Astrology, and I'd like to welcome you to this podcast looking at the effects of having the North Node in your 6th house in your birth chart, or what will happen should the North Node be transiting, i.e. moving through your 6th house. So this is a podcast of 2 parts, and I guess to understand the full extent of this podcast, we have to first have a good working knowledge of what the North Node is and how it relates to us on a personal level, and also what the 6th house is all about. So I'm going to be covering all of that as we go along. So let's just start with the North Node. The first thing to really bear in mind about the North Node is we never really read it on its own. The North Node has the South Node in complete opposition. So the two go hand in hand. The South Node really describes where you've already got some expertise and karmic lessons that you've already mastered. So it shows where you are naturally quite brilliant and where you just have a kind of magic, a sort of karmic magic of brilliance in some way. And the North Node shows what we're karmically learning, so what we're not so good at, and what our life's mission is all about. So it's quite an important set of directions to be aware of, where you're coming from and where you're moving to. Now, for those of you that believe in past lives and karma from a cyclical perspective, you might notice that the South Node represents what you've been learning in subsequent lives, past lives. So, you know, what you've learnt in your previous few or previous 10 lives, what you've got very, very good at. So you can look at it from that way. I guess if you don't believe in past lives or that kind of model of karma, then you might want to be aware of the South Node representing what you've come into this lifetime knowing, i.e., just really good habits or talents that you seem to have dominion over. So it really describes something where there's a natural unconscious competence that, you know, you can just pull things out of a hat. So the North Node then is really our karmic direction of what we need to learn in this lifetime, what we're struggling to learn, what doesn't really come easy to us. And a lot of the meaning of the North Node within our charts is dependent upon how it's aspected by the other natal planets in your birth chart. So for instance, where your North Node is conjunct a planet, that's going to give it an extra flavour and description, whether it's in opposition or square to another planet or a particular asteroid, then that can also create some dynamics. Sextiles and trines are quite fortuitous. They really help support the expression of your North Node. But a lot of it depends on the quality of them and whether your North Node is in some kind of birth chart astrological pattern. So there's lots to explore about it. Now, the 6th house then. If you're born with the North Node in the 6th house, sorry, I'm just fidgeting a little bit. If you're born with the North Node in the 6th house, then it means that your South Node is in the 12th house. So if we start from the 12th house perspective, the South Node shows what you're really good at. And the 12th house is quite a difficult one to explain. It's naturally ruled by the Sun of Pisces, and has a natural kind of understanding of the planet Neptune. It really represents connectiveness and connectivity, universality, the expanded consciousness, I guess, is probably one way you could look at it, or looking at the unconscious mind, the Akashic records, whatever it is, whatever word you choose to use to describe infinity. It's infinity and beyond. So the 12th house is often deemed our place of our undoing. And I think most of that is because most people can't actually get a grip on the concept of the 12th house, the idea that it covers everything, pretty much everything. If you imagine, our conscious mind is just focused in on a few main details at any one time, but our unconscious picks up everything. So it's got all our unconscious behaviours, attitudes, emotions, memories, possibly past life memories. It has access to everything. It's the all-seeing eye within our mind-body system. The 12th house shows how well we cope with that kind of level of information, and how ready we are to understand ourselves in the context of the great unknown. And for most people, it's a pretty scary place. And so when the 12th house is heavily aspected or has things going through it, it can sometimes bring about a period of depression or confusion or psychological imbalance. It often occurs with a time when people are conscious of them needing to get a grip with their emotions and try to really understand what's driving their behaviours, what their fears are and stuff. So it's a pretty big thing. To have the South Node there implies that you've already got mastery over that. So from a past life experience, that possibly you are a master in your own right, like a spiritual master, an awakened being, somebody that is connected to all that there is, somebody that has a universality, an ability to tune in and tap into the laws of nature and the energies all around us. Somebody who can channel, somebody who can understand everything that occurs beyond themselves. The challenge in this lifetime is where the North Node is, which is the 6th house. And the 6th house is everything opposing the 12th house, consciousness, which is absolutely vast. So if you think about the vastness of the 12th house, its polar opposite is the smallness, I guess, of the 6th house. And the 6th house really shows day-to-day, mundane consciousness. It shows those few things that we're consciously aware of. It represents, as a child, it represents our day-to-day early education, I guess. The fact that you had your routine of probably going to school or after-school clubs or whatever. It then represents, how hard we may have studied and how we did it. It then describes our day-to-day running of our lives, how ready we are to have routines. So it's a really formulaic place, which a lot of people put so much emphasis on having good work-life balance. And the 6th house seems to encapsulate that. I guess if you look at the 6th house, the 6th sign of the zodiac, you've got Virgo. And Virgos are very meticulous, methodical, try to keep a routine. They really care about getting things right first time. They're quite detailed. And so there's a bit of a theme going on here. And so having the North Node in the 6th house is showing that you've come into this lifetime to understand the nitty-gritty, to understand the wood for the trees, you know the phrase, can't see the wood for the trees. In this lifetime, your lifetime is about zeroing in on all the detail and getting a routine and understanding a routine and making it work for you, even though you've got this vastness behind you, this vast understanding of the universe. It almost feels like in this lifetime you've been not regressed, but taken back to routine and the nature of it and why it's important to you. So that could be quite tricky. That can be very tricky, in fact, especially, if you have a sense of remembering who you might have been, or if you have a magnificence remembering of universality or feeling connected to everything, it can be very disconnecting to focus in on your day-to-day running of your life. The 6th house also looks at health. The Virgo energy, which is the ruler of the 6th house, is very meticulous and a little bit fussy about health. Virgos are often known as the hypochondriacs because they sort of check in with their body quite a bit but their minds are really driving it. Virgo energy has an affinity with Mercury, so there's this constant dialogue about health and what's going on, etc., etc. So having the North Node in the 6th house, I guess, could be really supported if you've got family members around you who are very regular and routined and quite measured in their approach to life. Then this could really help you. I guess if your life and the way you're brought up is quite extreme and has lots of difference and diversity, then it could be a lot more confusing, because it'll make it a lot harder for you to settle down and find that routine and find those healthy ways of life. It could be quite off-putting. So there's some things to think about, and it's quite a challenge in itself to live on this planet in a way that is supported by the planet, and that is supported so much by Western ideals of how culture should look like. So that's a sort of potted version of the 6th house. As North Nodes go, I don't think it's that difficult in the grand scheme of things, because most people do aspire to live quite a regular life and to have quite regular themes. I think the idea of success and what looks like a good life is often judged on how well adapted we are to the routine. So I think Western society is actually really helping somebody with a North Node in the 6th house, because the expectations for that life match where you're going with your karma. So what happens then if the North Node is going through your 6th house? Well, the thing to first of all bear in mind is immediately before transiting the 6th house, the North Node would have been in the 7th house and would have just crossed the point of the descendant. So before it goes in the 6th house, you've been working on your karma with people and your relationships. So there has been a certain amount of, I would imagine, diplomacy developed over the last 18 months, and also a clearing of all those people that you don't want in your life, and a focusing on all those people that you do want in your life. So I guess you're just coming out of a 18-month period of really learning about how easy it is to project onto others, learning more about yourself through your relationship with other people. So it's been quite an interesting and intense time. As the North Node goes into the 6th house, this is actually showing that through your advances, your karmic advances in understanding people and your relationship to other people, you have another crack at understanding your routines and your work and your health. So, for instance, where you can see that in the past you might have had some unhealthy relationships that made you question yourself and possibly encouraged you into unhealthy addictions or pastimes and things like that. Your recent foray into your relationships may very well have given you some new ideas on how you want to live health-wise, socially, work-wise, based on your relationship with people. If you know that other people can easily bring you down, then you'll be more noticeable of that in your current incarnation, in your current 18-month period. So I see this as a time of, I guess, your life catching up with what you've just known. So all of those lessons will be applied to your current day-to-day living, dependent on what stage of life you're at. So if you are in your teens or something, this might be a time when you're actually knuckling down, getting ready for exams and getting into routines and avoiding people that cause massive spikes and swings in your personality. If you're in your early 20s, this is quite an industrious time. In your 30s, you've probably loved and lost during the last 18 months, and you're probably embarking on some kind of new work. For instance, if you're about to go into the menopause, again, that's going to be changing your habits as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can apply regularity and an appreciation of the simple things, the simplicity of a routine. Anyway, hopefully that has been useful. If you are about to go through this, or indeed you do have a 6th house North Node and you want to talk more about it, then feel free to drop me a line at louisa@feelgoodastrology.com. That's Louisa. Anyway, until then, take care, look after yourselves, and watch out for more of my podcasts, because there might be more things to unravel.
You've been listening to Feel Good Astrology with Louisa Tanner Munson, and this recording has been made possible by all you lovely supporters at Patreon. To request a personal reading with Louisa, go to www.feelgoodastrology.com.